Dean of the Wharton School. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Dean of the Wharton School, it's my real honor to be part of this event this afternoon and to welcome you all to it. The chair of my board at the Wharton School is a guy called Mark Rowan, who's a co-founder of Apollo Private Equity, one of the most successful private equity firms in the world. And Mark likes to say these days, analytics is everything. Data and analytics are everything. So he says, finance is analytics, marketing's analytics, HR is analytics, analytics is everything. And I think that's absolutely true. I want to share with you the latest example of that I got just this morning. I was in New York for a fintech conference, and one of the new fintech firms is lending money to Major League Baseball players before they can become free agents, which is a risky thing because you've got to predict their contracts. How do you do that? You do it using analytics. So I was listening in a fintech conference, I was listening to a presentation on something called WAR, which is spelt war, but is pronounced WAR, and WAR is wins above replacement, which is the value of a baseball player. That did not exist even when Moneyball was written as a book under 10 years ago. So analytics truly is everywhere. Now let's pivot to Wharton. It's a great thing that Wharton is known all around the world as the finance school. That's pretty good brand association for us. But Wharton is also the analytics school. And it's really thanks to a couple of people who are instrumental in this event today. One is my friend and colleague, Eric Bradlow, who now is the director of something called the Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative, which should have good branding on the stage. But the second person is Art Bilger, who is not only a proud Wharton alum, he's also a member of our board of overseers, and it was him close to 10 years ago who really pressed Wharton into becoming more of an analytics-based institution, which was a natural move for us because Wharton is a very analytical place. Okay, now for our students at the Wharton School, the world is their oyster, and analytics is just an opportunity for them. And Wharton's a pretty big place by business school standards, but we only have about 5,000 full-time students at the school at any one time. What about the rest of the community, society, the country? People who don't get the opportunity to come to the Wharton School. What are they worried about? They're worried about the conjecture that robots, computers, AI are going to steal all the jobs. And it's that tension between the opportunity of technology and the concerns about the dislocations of technology that led Art to found WorkingNation, the mission of which is to spread throughout society the benefits that are so evident to the kind of people who come to the Wharton School to be students. Now, how do you ensure that the benefits of data and analytics are widely spread? I'm in higher education, so I believe education is part of the answer. But it can't just be degrees. We think that a concept like lifelong learning is going to profoundly change not only what the Wharton School is, but society as a whole. If we don't continually update skills and techniques to meet, as technology changes, of course people are going to be left behind, but we don't want that to happen. And of course, universities and higher education institutions can't do this on their own. We need lots and lots of partnerships. We need partnerships with community organizations, we need partnerships with firms, we need partnerships with government. So why are we all in it together? Why are you all here today? I think it's because technological innovation is arguably the defining characteristic of our time. You know, the other one is probably globalization. In my adult lifetime, I think they're clearly the two biggest things that have happened in the world. They both bring enormous opportunities, but they also bring lots and lots of dislocation, and with that dislocation comes emotional responses, uncertainty and fear. That's why the bridge that WorkingNation is trying to build between the opportunities that technological innovation and analytics offer and the benefits of those things to all of society. That's why building that bridge is so important. That's why WorkingNation is so important, and that's why I'm so pleased that the Wharton School is partnering with WorkingNation on this event. Having said that, it's time for me to exit the stage. My last responsibility is one I do with real joy, which is to introduce the founder of WorkingNation, proud Wharton alum, overseer of the Wharton School, and my friend Art Bilger.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. This is really a very exciting time for clearly WorkingNation and I think the Wharton School as well. As Jeff mentioned, I am an alum. I graduated in the 70s from Wharton and then went on. I've done many different things, starting in the investment world and then ultimately the media world and then the technology world and also the education world. And it is because of that background that much of this came together in my head starting about 5.5 years ago when I started thinking about what could be the most critical issue facing our nation, and that is a potential massive structural unemployment. And the combination of globalization, technology, longevity, keeping people in the workforce much longer, and broken education, particularly relative to those three things happening, I thought we have the potential of very significant unemployment rates out there. And I began crisscrossing the country to try to really learn from experts. And what I did gain an understanding of is where so many of the jobs of the future will be and the mitigating strategies and solutions. And solutions being largely created by corporations, not-for-profits, academic entities, and local government. Ultimately, I concluded that there was very little knowledge out there amongst the general audience out there. And I decided to basically create this not-for-profit media enterprise to educate the people of this country as to, one, the biggest issue I think we face, but two, what the solutions are. And today, WorkingNation, we launched officially September 2016. WorkingNation has TV producers, journalists, Academy Award-winning documentarians, researchers, et cetera, working for us. And today we are, we've got a fair amount of reach out there. Now, 4 strategies that we follow. One is storytelling via video and all, and that's telling a solution. 2, town hall events, such as this. And not only do we invite an audience like you to come to this, but we film this ultimately for TV broadcasting. 3rd strategy is journalism. 4th strategy, we're going to start very shortly, podcast. Anyway, data and analytics has been at the top of my list for a very long time. As Jeff mentioned, I was very involved in just the startup of the whole data and analytics program here at the Wharton School. And I really do believe data and analytics might be the fastest growing job area in this country over the next 5 to 10 years. Because there won't be an aspect of business, government, or the not-for-profit world that isn't driven by data and analytics. And today, we have largely, a very significant vacuum. So I couldn't be more excited about, one, the Wharton School taking the initiatives that it has, and it's really speeding up its involvement in this whole area. And 2, couldn't be happier to be here, speaking to all of you. So I think with that, what I'll do is we're going to put up a video. It'll give you some background and some sense of what WorkingNation's about and what it's focusing on. But as I said, data and analytics is one of the most important subjects that we're focused on at WorkingNation.
We have another gut-wrenching story about the middle class and its workers tonight. After I was let go, it was complete and utter shock.
I have to come up with another plan, and I don't have one.
There's a problem that's coming, and it's coming very quickly.
You're thinking, how do I start making money again to support my family? You're absolutely terrified.
In 2016, WorkingNation was formed with one mission: to raise and elevate awareness, finding and sharing solutions to the unemployment crisis facing our country.
Outside of bad guys getting terrible weapons, this is the most important issue facing this nation.
To accomplish this crucial goal, WorkingNation illuminates the heartfelt and human stories that capture this distress and resolve. Through organized town halls, important news and information programming with national distribution partners, and moving documentaries.
Your identity is just taken away from you.
I mean, there's no handbook that shows you this is what you need to do.
WorkingNation brings powerful voices together to reveal the real people and organizations attacking this issue in their communities.
People don't need charity. People need opportunity.
Working to build consensus and collaboration between business leaders, the academic community, and the American public.
There are millions of people in this country who want to be of service.
To expose hard truths about this unemployment emergency in order to create and amplify the right response.
We're all working towards the same goal.
Time is running out. We all have to do something to make this shift. WorkingNation. Please lend your voice and get involved now.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Michelle Caruso-Cabrera in Philadelphia, and this is The Future is Now, Closing the Data Analytics Skills Gap. It's a joint town hall from the Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative and also WorkingNation, of course. As the amount of data that we consume on both a personal and a business level continues to grow, the demand for people who can mine and analyze that data, well, it's growing enormously. Data analysis is driving today's business decisions in all industries, from financial services to healthcare to marketing to sports. We all know that, right? It's one of the most in-demand jobs in America. That's according to both LinkedIn and the Glassdoor. Just 4 years ago, 2.35 million jobs required data science and analytical skills in the country. And by next year, that number is expected to top more than 3 million. Right now, fewer than 1/3 of the top 100 universities in the world offer degrees in data science. So in this town hall, through our panelists, the words of business, education, we're going to examine how data analysts are changing the nature of work, how businesses are working to fill the many open jobs, and what skills workers are going to need in order to occupy those roles, how the education system is changing to help keep the pipeline full of future workers. We've got a lot to cover. Let's get started. We have a very special guest. We thought we would kick it off with a conversation about what is data science and how it has evolved over the past 2 decades. To help us understand where we began and where we are right now, Alan Blue. He's one of the co-founders of LinkedIn. Come on out, Alan. So good to have you here. Have a seat. Tell us how it all got started, Alan.
Well, I can only tell the story from the perspective of somebody working in Silicon Valley. It's hard to believe that 20 years ago, the whole notion of data science was brand new. I don't think anybody had even used the term yet. So it was, for me, it was 1997 when I got my first job in the internet. It was at a dating site, and it was called relationships.com, for the record. And back then, data science was just barely visible. But by the time we got to about 2000, we began hearing about a company called Tagged. And Tagged still exists. It's a social network. It was one of the very first social networks.
Tagged?
Exactly. And they were doing something brand new that none of us had really seen before. What they were doing is something called multivariate testing. So what they would do is they would say, hey, people get invited to join Tagged, and they would create hundreds of different invitation types with different colors, different numbers of words, different button styles, that kind of thing, to send an email. And then they would send them all out, and they would determine which one provoked the greatest response from the person who had been invited. And this became, over the following years, and it still is to this day, one of the primary mechanisms by which people in the internet do their work. So data science began as a mechanism for measuring and optimizing the activities that occur every day in a large-scale data environment. That's really the difference which made data science possible. Because before the internet, a lot of the data that was available just wasn't all pulled together. It was really hard to see some things. But with the internet, every single action that a user takes is visible. So suddenly there was this huge volume of data, which enabled new kinds of research. So fast forward a little bit, we founded LinkedIn in 2003. And by the time we got to 2005, what I like to think about as the second half of data science came into play. So the first half was doing this kind of real-time analytics of something which was happening, how people were using the product. But the second part was about building products for people to use. And the one we started with at LinkedIn was called People You May Know, which is not a very great title. We're not very good at titles at LinkedIn.
Well, everybody gets it.
But everybody gets it.
Right.
So if you've logged into LinkedIn, we recommend to you people, here are people who you should connect with because we think you know them from a previous job or from a school or some other relationship. This is an example of the second half of data science, which is about machine learning and algorithm development. So what we did is we had this large amount of data, and we were able to build systems which would predict for a user, for an individual user, what that person might actually find valuable. So these two together is very much how I think about the world of data science. And I'm happy to say that we saw a bunch of it occur right there at LinkedIn in the very earliest days. So let's fast forward a little bit further. When we get to 2009, LinkedIn's pretty big at this point, several million users, and we're able to do yet a third thing, which is we're able to actually watch the way the entire economy works by virtue of what our members are doing. We call this idea the economic graph. And in 2009, the very first project we did was we looked at the people who had been employed at Lehman Brothers. If you all remember, Lehman Brothers collapsed in the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
And all of those people went and took jobs at other companies. So we were able to actually draw a map. You can still find it on the internet, watching where all the refugees from Lehman went and worked. And this gave us a great idea that maybe if we could look at the jobs, if we could look at the skills they required, the skills people had, the companies they had worked for, we might be able to provide insights about where the skill gaps are, about where the best opportunities actually lie. And that has been something we've been doing for the past 5 years. So we've been able to turn this same mechanism back to look at data science as an area of focus. And there's a lot to say about it. I'll say this though. Data science, along with machine learning, the two of them together, represent 5 of the top 15 growing jobs in America today. So if you look at that list of the top 15, 5 of them are data and machine learning related. The second thing is that they are always accompanied by severe skill gaps. So all the jobs that exist in San Francisco, including the ones that haven't been filled yet, there are more than 38,000 jobs which need to be filled, more than there are people who have the skills to fill them. So if you're learning data science, however you're actually learning it, whether you're learning it here, or whether you're learning it through some other mechanism or through experience, there is a gigantic skill gap waiting for you out there.
We're going to have a TV audience. A lot of people might be novices to this topic.
Yes.
A lot of people might conflate big data with data analytics. It's different, right? How?
So big data is the foundation on which it's all built. This ability to not only see, but also store all the data necessary. Sure. So there was actually a new company which went public, not went public, but it went out of stealth today, which talked about storing exabytes of data as a service. And that's exactly what people need to do right now. Big data means I want to store everything I know about my supply chain or everything I know about how our users use our products all together so I can look at it in real time and I can look at it historically over the entire life of the company. That's big data. So way bigger than any data that anyone had ever managed before.
Data analytics.
And data analytics is the process of analyzing that data and drawing conclusions from it. And machine learning is the process of building algorithms on top of that data to either optimize for particular kinds of outcomes or predict behavior.
It sounds like you need a computer science degree to have that kind of job. Do you have to have a computer science?
You do not. So in the early days of LinkedIn, we were having a hard time hiring data scientists, the same as today. And data scientists in 2005 and 2006 almost entirely came from the world of the hard sciences.
Physics, chemistry, et cetera.
Biology, and so forth. And that is still the case today. So if you are in one of those fields, you have an opportunity to basically convert and become a data scientist. Because you've already learned how to think about it properly. You just need to learn the tools.
I think that would be a big help when it comes to increasing the number of women in data analytics, right? Because when you look at computer science degrees, they're almost all men.
Yes.
But when you look at the hard sciences, there's a much more even breakdown, isn't there?
It really is, and this is a major topic. So right now, there are 4 men working in data science for every 1 woman, data science and machine learning. And that happens to be about what the proportions are in the world of computer science. And what's even more worrying about that difference is that the male roles tend to be more management roles, more leadership roles, and the female roles.
Higher paying?
Good question. I don't have the answer to that. I don't actually know.
I bet.
But then the female roles are more about research, more about teaching. So there's a real gap to be filled there. But you are absolutely right. The balance when you look at biology or the balance when you look at physics, those are actually, the gender breakdown is actually roughly 50-50.
Really?
So that's an opportunity to not only hire a bunch more data scientists from a place that you didn't know you could probably get them, but it's also a way to close that gap. And closing that gap is really essential. We talk about how important it is, what a great opportunity this is for people, but let's not forget how important machine learning and data science have become. They are part of everything. If you have your phone, the latest iPhones and Android devices have chips in them which are specifically focused on driving machine learning on board the actual phone. It has become part of it.
Does that mean it gets smarter as I use it? Is that the whole idea?
That means that there
knows me better?
There are resources on the phone which allow it to do real-time machine learning on the phone. So sometimes it makes it smarter. Sometimes it just helps with things like language recognition and so forth. So it is now part of everything we do. It's part of every decision you make on the internet. It's part of everything that you buy from Amazon.com. It's part of the advertisements you see, many of which are powered by machine learning and big data. All of those decisions are being made by machines, and those machines are being built in large part by men. And if we're going to get to a place where we are representing the entire breadth of human experience, it is a question of bias, but it's also a question of opportunity. We need to make sure the people who are making those decisions are coming from many different backgrounds.
It sounds like, in addition to people who are studying the hard sciences, if you're somebody who wants to be in marketing, you should be taking a course or learning about data analytics, right? Because it's going to be just, in every single industry, there's going to be all this data to mine, and your ability to find stories in there that help deliver on a business proposition are going to be crucial, even if you didn't major in bio or computer science or anything else.
That's right. So I'm a product manager by training, and product managers are famously not really able to do anything by themselves. So I have some knowledge about machine learning. I have some knowledge about data. I can write SQL. I can do all those things. I know roughly how basically how machine learning functions are constructed. I couldn't do it myself. But for me to have a conversation with the engineer, for me to understand what the product is actually capable of, I need that basic set of skills. So that is absolutely true. But I'll tell you one more thing. Part of the WorkingNation project is about how do you actually move from the world we live in today into a world where nearly every job is changed by the presence of technology. So whatever you're doing, unless you are working in something which is purely creative or purely about person-to-person contact, your job is already changed or is being changed by technology. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. For you to be able to do your job well in the future, not only do you need to understand these technologies, but also you need to learn new technologies as they come on board. So get ready to learn new tech all the time, because it's coming. And for you to be able to roll with the changes which are part of this technological revolution, you need to be able to take on new skills every year.
We know that 40% of the live audience here tonight are business leaders. I bet they're here because they're having trouble hiring people in data analytics.
We all are.
What is your advice to them about finding these people?
Use LinkedIn. I'm kidding. It's actually not my only advice, but use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually very good for it, because one of the things which is true about data scientists is that data scientists are almost all already employed. There are no data scientists out there, passing out their resumes, or very few, because they're so in demand. So if you are looking for a data scientist, I think one of the most important things you can do is you can say, is my company something, I think there are two cases. Is my company somebody who is in an industry where we are supposed to know about data science, where our peers are using data science? And if so, you need to establish yourself as somebody who treats data science as a first-class citizen. So if you're working on marketing and you're not using data science, you need to change that internally so that somebody looking at you from the outside can say, I bet that company gets it. Second thing, and this is an amazing opportunity for people who are doing data science. 3-4 years ago, data science was limited to just high tech and software, right? Everything was in this very narrow pipeline around the internet, around the places where the data was actually available. But in the last 3 years, we have seen massive growth, 15x, 20x growth in industries like education and marketing and manufacturing for data science-based jobs. And if you are a data science person, you may actually be interested in going to one of those industries and being the first data science scientist
pioneer.
there. A pioneer. You have an ability to go to someplace where nobody's using data science and to get them on the clue train. Because it's really, really important for every industry which has the data upon which you can build data science to be learning about it and taking advantage of it. You can attract great people to come run it if you take it seriously and you're in one of those industries.
I'm going to use that line in the future, get on the clue train. Alan, it's great chatting with you. Alan Blue, founder of LinkedIn.
Thanks.
Don't move, don't move. We're going to mine a little data of our own tonight.
Yeah.
At this town hall, WorkingNation is introducing our first WorkingNation live poll. We've partnered with a company called Dial Smith to ask select audience members their perceptions about data analytics jobs, the skills you need to get them, how the education system is evolving to help job seekers get those skills. So we've handed out about 100 of these Dial Smith handheld devices that you have in the audience. The dial on the front goes from 1 to 5. With 1 being strongly disagree with the statement, 2 being somewhat disagree, 3 being neither agree nor disagree, and 4 being somewhat agree, and 5 being strongly agree. So using that 1 to 5 scale, we're asking our Dial Smith audience if they disagree or agree with the following statement. Employers easily can find data analytics job applicants who can both mine data and tell business relevant stories. Start voting. Don't move, we're going to show you the results after the break. Not just the results of the live poll, but lots more coming up here on this special town hall with WorkingNation when we return.
I was a kid when inroads began. This would have been the mid-'60s, very tumultuous time in American history. My dad would have inner-city kids come spend the weekend at our home, which was in this suburban Connecticut town, quite an odd thing. But nonetheless, he was unwavered.
I remember coming home from college and finding out that my dad was going to leave the corporate world and start Inroads. In fact, Inroads headquarters was the chair in our living room. He took a bunch of school buses to the March on Washington.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty! We are free at last!
He was changed forever. He came up with this idea to take kids who just didn't have a chance and put together in a program that would get them into management positions in corporations and give them a way to move up. And that was the real brainchild of Inroads.
There's been an unlevel playing field in America for a long time. And that's what our founder, Frank Carr, was trying to resolve. There's unequal access of information, there's unequal access of opportunity, and there's unequal access of relationships. In order to build the workforce, we need to close that gap. Frank Carr started with African Americans in 1970. And today, with other minorities, we're now 28,000 alumni strong, and we've touched 154,000 lives.
Growing up with a single mother in a traditionally Indian background was challenging for me. No one in my family had been to college in America. No one had experienced the internship process. But in college, I realized that my background was actually an opportunity. Inroads provided me with a chance to stand at the same level as my peers who have so many resources and can refer to their families to provide them with their internships. Inroads is that family for me. I'm Arun Yagnamurthy. I'm 21 years old, and I'm from Dallas, Texas. What initially caught my eye about Inroads was the corporate sponsors. I'm actually interning at Procter & Gamble.
Procter & Gamble is one of the largest purveyors of consumer goods in the world. Diversity in the workforce is important because if you have a workforce that fully reflects the society, then you have the greatest range of possibilities for innovation, for creativity that really fuels the growth in the company.
Inroads is one of the original leaders in opportunities for diverse individuals. It's important that companies like Procter & Gamble continue to infuse that kind of talent in order to not just be successful in their companies, but to be contributors as part of the overall society.
He sought Fortune 500 companies like an arrow going right for them. He knew they had the funds, he knew that they had the expertise. He needed their partnership in developing Inroads.
I'm doing exactly what the real professionals would be doing. I've had the chance to learn so much during this internship and narrow down what I really want to do with my life.
I think Arun is very well equipped to make it in corporate America because he's already demonstrated great leadership skills, great collaboration skills, the ability to execute against a plan. Arun has the ability to just jump right into a project pretty much day one.
An internship with P&G is not like some other companies where you're getting coffee and making copies. The work that you're doing is very meaningful, it's very impactful.
Most internship programs end at the end of the summer. Our model is built to be year-round because that's what we think learning is. It's year-round. The mentorship is so that you have a personal coach for the rest of your life.
After their internship, they have questions. Now what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to get that full-time job? And that's what we help them do to transition onto their career.
Inroads are supporting people with diverse backgrounds, with diverse upbringings. I'm so grateful for everything they've done for me.
There are tons of different people in every organization that don't look like me, that don't look like you. We got to work together. We're people.
I think my father's legacy is Inroads. He got it started and it's continued. The Inroads group has just done it.
He really wanted this to be run by the folks that it was meant to serve. What I see here today, oh my gosh, it's thrived and it looks like it's going to keep going forever and ever.
Welcome back to The Future is Now, closing the data analytics skills gap. This is a WorkingNation, the Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative town hall here in Philadelphia. Sports generates a massive amount of data, much of which goes unmined and is never analyzed. in an effort to encourage teams to start taking a closer look at this wealth of information and to encourage job seekers to think about a career in sports data analysis, the NFL gave outsiders a look at all their internal data. The inaugural Big Data Bowl competition launched in December, and it invited college students and professionals in the analytics field to analyze and rethink trends and player performance and innovate the way football is played and coached. The response was impressive, with more than 100 submissions, and among the finalists was a group of students from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Abraham Weiner, though everybody calls him Audi, is their professor here at Wharton, and he's here in the audience. Good to have you here. Right there in the front row. Tell us about the Big Data Bowl and why these kids are participating and what they're learning from it.
So they're participating because they love sports and they love statistics, and the two have come together in my class for about a year. It's a seminar that I run about sports and sports analytics and actually sports research. So when they heard about the Data Bowl coming NFL, they just jumped all over it. And they put together a submission in about 3 days, and we're amazingly fortunate to become finalists.
And can you give us a teaser as to what they discovered or what angle of the data that they worked on?
Well, the data that was presented to them was spatiotemporal tracking data. So essentially all the information about what the players on the field are doing at any given time, calculated over 10 times per second. So our team and actually one other student from the School of Engineering, Eric, who's right over here, was able to extract from that information the routes that the receivers were taking and try to figure out which types of routes are more effective, which produce more completion rates, and ultimately have a higher expected point valuation. So they're finalists, right? When are the finals? The finals are tomorrow, so 3 of the 4 members of the team are actually already in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. So today and tomorrow is where all the professional athletes or future professional athletes are displaying their skills, and in the back rooms, the analysts are also displaying theirs. This is a perfect example of how nearly every industry is interested in data analytics and what it can do for them, right? I would guess, although sports has been in this game a bit longer than other people, because particularly baseball, as Dean Garrett mentioned earlier, has been on top of the data revolution a lot earlier than anyone else. We wish them the best of luck. It's fantastic. I certainly do. Thank you so much. You're welcome. So before the break, we asked our Dial Smith audience how much they agreed or disagreed with the following statement. Employers easily can find data analytics job applicants who can both mine data and tell business relevant stories. Let's take a look at the results. Okay, overwhelmingly, strongly disagree. That's the biggest percentage that we've gotten. Somewhat disagree. Very few people actually disagree. So clearly there's a reason to be holding this town hall today, because there's a desperate need to fill this pipeline and get people into those jobs that are out there and unfilled. So how can businesses build a bench of very smart data analysts that can both source the data and at the same time build a bridge to telling a business story that can be easily understood by key executives that can take action on that data? What strategies are businesses using to recruit and retain the best data and analytics talent? To help us expand our thinking on this challenge that we face today, join us in welcoming Ravi Kandakonda. He's Senior Vice President of Marketing Strategy and Planning for Comcast. Bhushan Sethi is Partner and Joint Legal Leader for People and Organization for PwC. Come on out, Ravi. Come on, Bhushan. Steve Kern is the Deputy Director of Quantitative Sciences for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Kevin Mahoney is the Executive Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer of Penn Health. And Zvi Gal is the CTO of Morgan Stanley. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
The first thing that strikes me is the breadth of the kind of companies here. Media, consulting and accounting, a foundation doing nonprofit work and philanthropic work, finance, obviously, right? I mean, there's all stuff here that everybody, every single industry already proof is using data analytics. Ravi, let's start with you. In Comcast, what do you need data analytics for?
Sure. Obviously, it's
It's a very important area for us as a business. And the way I think about the space and how it's evolving, there are three key characteristics. Number one is the volume. The volume of data that we are collecting across our businesses on the NBC side, on the distribution side, as well as our universal theme parks, the amount of data that we're collecting is continuing to increase. Then the second dimension is velocity, the rate at which we are collecting that has been just exponentially growing and will continue to do so as Internet of Things and other things come into play. As a result of which, the third dimension, which is complexity. So when we look at all of these dimensions and trying to make sense of what does it mean to solve business problems, how do we leverage this to drive better customer experience or better outcomes for our partners or the company, it's about how do you explain that complexity and how do you not only do the data analysis part from a volume perspective, but also explain what it
Where to spend money for advertising and marketing and things like that?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
we spend, from a marketing standpoint, we're one of the largest media advertisers in the country. That means how do you allocate spend between the traditional channels like TV versus digital channels that are up and coming whose value is not yet proven? How do you make the case and how do you build that ecosystem that it will prove? That's a key differentiator and is a competitive advantage that the sooner you're ahead of the curve, the better our outcomes will be.
Svi, I think everyone assumes that data analytics happens in finance. Is there more to it than the obvious stuff that we know about when it comes to trying to analyze companies or trying to analyze trading and flows? Where at Morgan Stanley are you building the opportunities for data analytics?
So data, in reality, if you look at Wall Street today, we are in banking, but we live and die on information. That's all there is to it. So we use data analytics and data science in quite a few different ways. One which is defensive. In cybersecurity, we're trying to identify anomalies. We're trying to identify threats and behaviors that should not be there. So there are a lot of things that have to do with that. There's also the consumer side, when we actually work with our clients and allow them to work with virtual assistants, Alexa-like experiences, and trying to make sure that the experience that they go through when they talk to us is at least on par with a human interchange. And that's something that we spend a lot of time on as well. The other areas that have to do with, as you mentioned, complexities, and they have to do everything from next best action for the clients. It has to do also with the understanding of a certain trend in the industry and whether the trend is a real trend or is it just a bump, which has a lot to do with our algorithmic trading and stuff that has to do with understanding different types of data coming from different places. And there is the science itself of data, which is we collect a lot of data in a big data way, if you may, in data lakes and others. And in many cases, we are looking for given patterns that we are sure that they are there, and sometimes they are not there. And many times we find and identify new trends and new patterns that the data suggest as part of the search, things that we were not expecting. And that actually helps us understand both our clients' behavior and predict their behavior, as well as the same with companies and other areas in the industry, such as corporate actions, as well as government regulations and stuff as such. One of the things that we do in regulations is trying to learn from the different regulators around the world as they are creating new regulations, especially in areas that are new to them, such as cloud, etc., and try to understand not what the regulation is right now, but as we see it evolve, what should we expect, and as such, we are trying to be ready. So data is the blood of Wall Street. Data analytics is the oxygen of Wall Street.
Speaking of looking at data all over the world, Steve, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation does great work all over the world. How are you using data analytics to achieve the goals of the foundation?
Well, our goal at the foundation, one of our phrases is that we are impatient optimists. So we are trying to get to answers to questions that are of importance to our organization as quickly as possible. And we want to be efficient with the investments that we make in grants and in contracts and partnerships with our external collaborators. So we try to use the data that's generated from those investments to help make decisions, learn new insights, to tell us this is a direction we might want to go to next, or subsequently continue to push on in some of the areas that we're working around global health, in global development, and also in our US programs. And that has really been a challenge to be able to pull that data together. And Zvi mentioned the idea of big data, right? We're actually looking at broad data. So we want data actually that can go across a wide range of areas because of the global focus of what we're trying to do, and balance both having depth with enough information to learn something from that data, and then breadth so that we can see how much of it is translatable or generalizable from one place to another.
Do you have an example of where you've used data analytics, or an area where you would like to use it? Oh, if we had this, we could solve this?
Yeah, so one of the areas that we've been using data analytics a lot is to look around challenges that contribute to growth stunting. And one thing that was actually quite interesting is that we took a bunch of data. It's actually available from a website called Gapminder, which is run by the great data analysis and presenter Hans Rosling. And we took Hans's data and we basically tried to understand what are some of the factors that are consistent across different countries in different geographies that contribute to having malnutrition and stunted growth in children. And the interesting thing that we were able to do was we were partnering with people that then were working in genomics, because when they were looking at genomics data to say, I'm looking for a SNP in a gene, it's located here, I don't want to say that all the other SNPs have to be co-located with it, it might be somewhere else along the gene, right? And so trying to then take that tool and say, how do we apply it to this set of data and see if we can use it in a way that provides us with some information that's useful. And from it, we've started to be able to deconvolve essentially what are the factors and the key things that contribute to growth stunting in children across a number of different countries.
Wow. Wow, that's exciting stuff. Speaking of healthcare, Kevin, I mean, it's an area, healthcare's got to be one of the most obvious areas for opportunity when it comes to data and solving issues, whether it's across countries, within specific hospitals, et cetera. How are you guys using data analytics?
So I think it's an example of an old idea on steroids. So you used to go to your doctor, he would acquire some data, blood pressure, a lab test, family history. He would do some analysis in his brain based upon what he had learned over time, and he would intervene. Now the amount of data that we are acquiring, 23andMe, genomic data, exome data, even what we call the social mediome, which is what you're putting on Facebook, what you're putting on Twitter, gathering all that information off your Fitbit. The amount of that data, as Alan Blue said before, that big data trough is just enormous. And no one person can quickly go through that. So how do we analyze that data using the up-to-date tools so that when we intervene on a patient, hopefully keeping them out of the hospital, dispatching a paramedic to their house or a home nurse to their house so they don't have to come into the hospital, is going to reduce cost and improve the human condition. So we're very excited and continue to invest and grow not only our data analytics, but also the data visualization. So how do you get something quickly that's actionable to a doctor so they know, I see that, I know what to do, and not have to go through pages and pages of notes like they used to have to do.
Do you have an example that you've seen or that is becoming much more common within the healthcare industry that is an obvious good use of data analytics?
So we had a discussion yesterday on MS as a disease. And one of the physicians was pointing out to me that in the past, you were treated by, you'd be okay, and then you'd have a relapse of your disease, you'd get better. You'd go for several years, you'd have another relapse. But if you actually look on the progression of the disease, it's actually very linear. And they were saying if we could know when to intervene with a treatment before the relapse occurs, we could keep people a quality of life much better than they're currently having. So what used to be, we thought obvious, that you went through this sawtooth treatment, is actually very linear. But until you gather the data, often through patient-reported outcomes, so get on the smartphone in the morning, get on your iPad, walk, let us see how you're walking, because gait is an indicator of whether your MS is relapsing. And gathering that data all through the machine and analyzing it, and then giving it to the practitioner when they need it is going to be very powerful to us.
Fantastic. Sean, I saved you for last because PwC, I'm sure, uses data analytics, but you have dozens of clients, you probably personally, and thousands for PwC. What are you seeing within PwC and also within your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're embedding data and analytics in everything we do. It's in all of our products and services. We have to go to clients to visualize the decisions they're going to make. So it's no longer good enough to say, here's a workforce strategy, this is kind of what it may look like. We've got to actually visualize what those decisions would be, what the outcomes, what that means to growth, to financials, to engagement, to the people you need to hire, et cetera. The other thing is, what we're doing is we're building analytical skills. We believe that we're obviously hiring depth of data analytics teams, and there are definitely some of those folks, but we're democratizing it. We're saying that 55,000 people in our organization in the US need to have a base level of data and analytics skills. That's necessary, but not sufficient. If you don't couple that with business acumen, the right ability to communicate, influence, relationships, you need the whole package. But we really are taking the point that was made earlier that everyone, whatever your role, has to have a base level of analytics.
How are any of you finding it easy to hire people in data analytics? No, not a single one. No. It's all a struggle for all of you. So how are you solving that? What do you do?
Well, one of the ways that we're working on that is essentially trying to collaborate with universities to try to look at opportunities where we can work with students who are coming out of analytic backgrounds, statistics, engineering, but not just those areas as well, because you actually need people with subject matter expertise to partner with them. Actually, one of the things that Trevor Mundell, who's my boss at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, says, there's nothing more dangerous than a bunch of data analytics people left alone with the data. And because if you think about it, what's going to happen is you'll find an association, you'll find something, right, that's interesting. There's structure that exists in that data, but whether that data and that finding is actually something that's relevant for what you were trying to do is a real challenge. And so you have to match people together. So it's not that we have to get everyone out there to go and become the next greatest data analyst, but we have to have people that understand, and I think this is the point that Prashant was making, how do I consume that data? How do I work with that data? How do I partner with enough people who can analyze it so that we can do it in an effective way? And the message I'm hearing across all of us is that we're actually trying to forecast. Right? So we're all trying to predict what's going to happen next, learning from what's happened in the past, because that's how we want to be able to intervene in the system in a more efficient way, whether it's healthcare or an investment or in training and in opportunities with customers.
Yeah, and the way I also think about it is, if you look at those three dimensions that I was talking about, volume, velocity, and then complexity, if you're trying to find someone who does all three of those, it's very hard, right? That's where majority, I mean, those obviously, if you are that, then so you're a unicorn, and obviously you command a significant amount of money, so great for you if you are. But if not, what you do as a company is you start looking at who are the folks who are really good in looking at the data and curating it so that we can hand over to the next one. And the higher you move up the ladder in that, the more valuable you're going to get. So what we do when we look for people is, who is it that can come in and move up the ladder? Thereby, we're building that talent pool and bench.
Do they have to be college graduates?
Yes, at this point, yes. But I think hopefully that will change in the future, because it will, the reason I say yes is because the quantitative rigor that you would need, the critical thinking, critical reasoning skills that you would need, you build that through your college degrees. Now, hopefully, as we go through the next stage of evolution, we will be able to take some of those skills and teach them early on, either in elementary school levels or through STEM programs, and that should, alleviate some of the shortage.
Funny you should say that, because we have a panel on education coming up later.
Very important.
Zvi, you were going to say something.
We have, what we do, we have a program which is called the TAP program, where we hire students that graduated from school, and there are several hundred of them every year. And what we do there, we teach them basically the stuff that they need to know to work for us. Now, you would assume, and rightly so, that the majority of those students will come from STEM. We also found out that people that came from liberal arts background, especially when it comes to data and the different ways to look at data, are a great fit. So that's one of the things that we encourage people from the different types of schools to actually join us. And to your early point in the previous discussion, we achieved 50-50 in terms of male and female, in terms of the hiring, because we believe that everybody should be participating in this journey, and it should not be male only.
So if somebody majored in history or English, they could still
Absolutely.
be a good data analytic person?
Absolutely, and not just in data. They could have a fantastic career in technology and in IT. You don't have to be a computer science graduate. Of course, it helps because you have a head start, but as long as you have the right mindset and willing to learn, we found that many of the students that came from different liberal arts are actually flourishing in the company, doing extremely well.
And I would add to that, we're seeing a lot more organizations, even in the US, mid-career, saying, how do we reskill some people to give the base level of data and analytics, access to visualization tools, incenting them to do that either in the organization or with outside firms, and kind of bringing that back in. I got to believe over the next few years, data analytics is going to be so prevalent. It's like digital. Everyone's going to have a base level of it, and we're going to see more and more of that. So I think the pipeline of universities, and it's really important, but thinking of especially with the longevity of the demographics in the workforce, if people are going to be living to 100 and working till 80, there's going to be a lot more need to kind of reskill as you go.
One of the things I love, if I could just build on that about the healthcare environment, is we have high school graduates, college graduates, PhDs, postdocs. You run the gamut of education. I think Dean Garrett said it initially, everything's going to become analytics. So even if you're a technologist, you're going to be in data analytics, your focal point might be more narrow than some of the big data we've talked about. But we have 39,000 people that we need to train in data analytics. We try to do that through our Penn Medicine Academy. It's not just certificates, it's retraining and constantly, how can the data explosion help you do your job better?
We're going to take questions from the audience, so I want you guys to start lining up. We're going to have a few more questions up here, and then that'll give you time to come up to the microphones so that you can also pose some questions, not just me. If people are thinking about applying for these jobs, what should they be telling you about themselves and their skill sets, either if they're a fresh college graduate or if they're, to your point, somebody who's mid-career and retraining? What do they need to say about themselves to convince you that they can do this kind of job?
So how they've solved complex problems? Because we're staring at this as if the data's all there and we've got the tools and it's just about interpret and visualize and tell stories. But it's messy. In large organizations, it's really messy. The data's in a really bad place. It doesn't reflect reality, whether it's product, customer, or workforce. And being able to go and interrogate that and go kind of clean that up and invest in the technology and tell the right stories and then analyze and do some of this kind of great insight that we've been, as an industry, looking for the last 25 years as we've been talking about data. I think that's an important skill.
I would like to also dispel some kind of a myth that data analytics and data science is a mechanical work. It actually requires a lot of creativity. It's not just, you run an algorithm, what you find, you move it forward, etc. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to look for patterns that may or may not exist there. And that's one of the reasons that I mentioned before, that people from liberal arts background can actually do well because they write stories. They can think in a different way, in a more abstract way. So that's another part of the way to think when you look at it from this perspective. So I think that for us, what we are looking for are people that actually have this level of creativity. But most important is they have the passion. The passion to learn, the passion to better themselves, the passion to actually apply their abilities to their work. We found out that the people that do the best, not just in data analytics, anywhere in technology, are the people that actually really like it. They really want to do it. It's not just a good paying job. It's something that it's fun to do. So if you have the passion, you come in and you really want to do it and you really enjoy it, you'll succeed more than someone that may have better grades than you, that may have basically finished computer science in 3 months because they are so geniuses. but they don't have what it takes. What it takes is way more on the EQ side, not just the IQ side.
And I see everybody nodding their head in agreement.
I'll just add to that part. One of the, if all things given equal, to your point, passion, the capability to reason properly and analyze it. One differentiating factor that I look for is comfort with ambiguity and being able to collaborate with teams, because data is messy. Unless you are comfortable with that ambiguity and be able to look for patterns underneath, it's going to be hard. So that's another characteristic we look for.
Gentlemen, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much. I think a lot of good takeaways for the audience. Don't move, because we're going to do a poll. Okay. Time for another poll of our Dial Smith audience. We've handed out 100 of these Dial Smith handheld devices. So, using the 1 to 5 scale, we're asking our Dial Smith audience if they disagree or agree with the following statement. You need a strong background in computer science to have a successful career in data analytics. Use 1 if you strongly disagree with the statement, 2 if you somewhat disagree, 3 if you neither disagree nor agree, 4 if you somewhat agree, 5 if you strongly agree. After this discussion, I'm guessing what I think most people are going to answer, but we'll find out. The results of our Working Nation live data poll coming up, and a lot more when we return. We want to share with you another video of Working Nation with you. This one is about how an innovation computer training program that gives prison inmates a skill for when they are released. Take a look.
Have you ever wanted something so bad that you were willing to risk everything that you had in order to make room for the thing that you wanted the most? Have you ever wanted something so bad that you were willing to look past the naysayers and hold on to the thing that you wanted without never doubting that sooner or later it would come?
I've been working here about 6 months. And every time I park in the parking structure, I could see the whole ocean. And I remember those times I was in prison and felt so suffocated. Now I feel the breeze and it feels amazing. It doesn't get old for me. My name is Charles Anderson. I'm a software engineer in Los Angeles.
The incarcerated population in the U.S. is an absolute untapped resource. The dedication you get from these folks is huge. This is more than a job. This is a life mission for many of them, and that was really the impetus for starting The Last Mile.
WorkingNation is a multifaceted e-commerce platform, and we specifically help florists. Charles has been an incredible employee. He exemplified the kind of qualities that we wanted for that person that we were hiring. I didn't know his past. He told me his story, and I was floored.
My father was very abusive growing up. My mother tried to stop my dad, but that would only make matters worse. I seen the devastation on her face. It broke my heart. My fear for my father slowly started turning into anger. At the age of 14, I joined the gang. At the age of 19, I was incarcerated for 10 years. I felt my life was over. I have these crimes on my record, no education. Nobody's ever gonna give me a chance. Nobody's gonna give me an opportunity. The last 2 years that I had left in prison, I decided to take the last mile, and it was the best decision I've ever made for my life.
75% of those who are formerly incarcerated are unemployed within the first year. Without employment, there's more chance that when they come home, they'll go back. We believe that having a job is the key to successful re-entry and breaking the cycle of incarceration.
We're teaching people how to be free before they get out, to actually meaningfully impact what this person is going to do for the rest of their life, how they're going to be able to support their families. It's absolutely important.
No matter where you are in this country, people who are incarcerated, they return to you. And how do you want a guy to return to your community? Do you want a guy who's been sitting in prison, hardened by just the environment? Or do you want a guy who has some new skills and hope that he can take care of himself and his family? Which guy do you want coming home to you?
It's not just Silicon Valley and California where you're seeing technology, it's the middle of the U.S. that has this appetite as well.
Indiana, like most states, has grappled with a recidivism rate that is too high.
When you hear about a program that has a 0% recidivism rate, you start to wonder, how'd they do that? This has given people the skill set to get a job, a meaningful, fulfilling job where they are contributing to the bottom line. And for many folks, they've never had that before.
I have not had a lot of employment in my past, and I'm worried about my future. I want to be a productive citizen when I go back into society. The last mile, what it is for me, is the last mile of my incarceration. It is what I will build my life on when I leave here.
While incarcerated, graduates of the Last Mile Works can actually earn the market wage which they can save, so when they walk out the gate, they'll have money to restart their life.
There's a website that I'm developing that introduces people to help each other out. When I thought about having the site built, I didn't think, oh, I need to get some inmates. Where can I find them? It just sort of happened very organically. It's just such a strong message that wherever you are in the world, you can make a big, significant difference. Even people in a prison. And these guys are creating a site that has a potential to make a lot of social impact and make the world kinder.
These are people that want to work. These are people that have to work doubly hard to make sure that they can provide for themselves and their families. A lot of the guys that I went through the program with, they're shining stars in their organizations. If you want a shining star, hire a formerly incarcerated person.
Being accepted into the Last Mile would be the beginning of my future. The set of skills is what I will build my life on. It's the foundation of my life when I leave here.
This is going to move someone from the back of the line to the front of the line. So this Last Mile program really starts the first mile of the rest of their life.
I've been homeless, I've been poor, I've been a gang member, I've been a drug addict, but I'm a software engineer now. I didn't come out thinking, oh, I'm an inmate trying to get a job. I came out thinking, no, I'm a software engineer trying to get a job.
I feel privileged to know Charles on his journey. A lot of people, we take for granted our own upbringing and the support that we were given. He didn't have that. If he's come this far, think of what he can do now that he's got more support. He's going to do great things.
My dream is to create little tech hubs in these underprivileged communities. And I don't want to kick these people out. No, I want them to be a part of it. I want them to join me. I want them to transform their lives and see that it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your past. If you have a dream, you have a vision, you have people that believe in you, you can make it happen.
One day you was bold enough to ask yourself the question, what if? What if we started to treat our last mile as if it were our first steps in reconciliation? What if? What if my life can be something other than this? What if?
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked our Dial Smith audience their views of how much they agreed or disagreed with the following statement. You need a strong background in computer science to have a successful career in data analytics. Let's take a look at the results. Strongly disagree, 44%, the biggest number. And based on the last conversation, that makes a lot of sense. Somewhat disagree, 32%. 5% though think that you still need some kind of background in computer science. That may be true now, but our previous panel seemed to think that's going to change pretty dramatically. We've learned that it's important to differentiate between the emerging world of big data and data analytics as specialties in themselves. And the question that we need to explore is, how do we develop a broad workforce that has data analytic capabilities that also include people outside the field of data science? To take us through this conversation, we look to Burning Glass Technologies. This is an analytics software company that has cracked the genetic code of the ever-changing labor market. Armed with the largest and most sophisticated database of labor market data and talent, Burning Glass is known for their use of real-time data to inform careers, define academic programs, and also shape workforces. We're very excited to have with us here on stage Matt Siegelman. He's the CEO of Burning Glass Technologies. Good to have you here.
So great to be with you.
When we say Burning Glass Technologies has all this data, why is that? What are you doing with it? What is it, so the audience understands?
So we're very lucky to have a unique view on what's going on in the job market. We go out and we collect millions of job postings every day, hundreds of millions of people's resumes and career histories, and then what we do is we translate it to a common language. Think about all the different ways that there are of describing the same job. We put that in the same language so that we can aggregate it up and understand what's going on in the market, what jobs are in demand, but also what skills it takes to get those jobs.
When you look at the last question that we asked the audience about computer science degrees, do you need to be a computer science expert to get a job in data analytics, or where can people who have a different set of skills get these jobs?
Well, I think the answer is strongly no. But that's because I think it's important to differentiate between jobs in data science and data analytics and jobs that need data science and data analytics. Thus far, a lot of our conversation has tended to focus on the former, on the rapidly growing demand for data scientists and others whose careers are focused on data analytics. And those jobs are growing incredibly fast. Just to give a quick data point on that, in 2010, there were 150 job postings for data scientists. Last year, there were almost 25,000. Wow. So tremendous rates of growth. But the much bigger story here is all the jobs that are jobs we've long been used to thinking about, which are increasingly demanding people to have data analytics skills. To put that in perspective, in 2012, there were only 12 occupations with heavy reliance on data analytics skills, comprising about 270,000 jobs. Last year, there were 33 occupations with heavy demand for data analytics skills, comprising almost 1 million jobs. So that's a much bigger rate of, even though the rate of growth may be a little slower, the number of jobs whose DNA is essentially getting rewritten by data analytics skills is much bigger. To give some examples there, you may think about marketing people.
I was going to say every marketing manager in the world in the future is going to have to know about data
Absolutely.
analytics, right?
Think about it this way. When we all know people who are marketing managers and marketing analysts, they often went into that field because they're right-brain people. But today, marketing is about being able to manipulate and analyze customer data. So you take a marketing manager, she's getting paid $71,000 a year. A marketing manager who has a skill as common as SQL skills, the ability to build a customer database and query a customer database, she's making $100,000 a year.
That's a huge gap.
Exactly, but at some level it's a huge gap, but another way to think about it is it's a very small gap. In terms of the dollar amount that she's making, it's huge and there's a great return on investment. But fundamentally, the difference between a marketing manager and a marketing manager with SQL is just a couple of skills. And so what really this reveals is that a basic principle that we all learned in Economics 101, which is arbitrage, plays out in the job market. And you remember arbitrage, it's that whole buy low, sell high thing, right? $71,000, it doesn't cost me $29,000 to learn SQL and make 100.
Are there jobs out there that you think the leap is easy to make from doing one to the other? I think maybe a website designer, somebody who is really into graphics and being creative, it seems like that might be a natural person who could acquire a few more skills to go to data analytics. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I think there's a range of these jobs, and especially when you look at data analytics as being not an occupation, but as being a skill that is transforming a lot of jobs that we're used to thinking about. Then there are these kinds of examples all over the place, in marketing, in finance, and life science, and yes, in fields like web development and graphic design.
What's the piece of advice you would give to people who are just graduating or thinking about making the leap or want to do exactly what you just said, go from making $70,000 to $100,000?
One of the things I think it's really important for us to think about when we think about the demand for data science and analytic skills and what it means for somebody in her career. This is a skill set that exists at really kind of two levels. We're used to thinking about most skills really either being timeless skills, the kinds of skills like creativity and critical thinking that stay with you throughout your career, or timely skills like learning Ruby on Rails or whatever it may be, which are here today and gone, maybe not tomorrow, but probably not too many years past.
Right.
Exactly. What we're seeing is that this is a skill set that exists at both dimensions. On the one hand, data analytics skills are absolutely fast growing, but also fast changing. So interesting to look at of top data science and analytics skills that are in most demand today. What you'd find is that that list is very different from what they were 5 years ago. And when you look at what's projected to grow, none of the skills that are on the top list today are on the fastest growing into the future. So when we sort of think about that change from skills like SQL to skills like data visualization and data lakes and other kinds of things which are growing fast, you can see that that DNA changes very fast. On the other hand, data analytics as a skill, as a core capability, is increasingly foundational. Recently done some work with the Business Higher Ed Forum looking at what are the foundational skills of the 21st century. And the ability to understand data, the ability to analyze data, the ability to visualize and present data are all core foundational skills that we see across dozens and dozens of occupations.
You know what? We're going to talk more about that in the education panel, which is coming up next, because as we've heard from our other panelists, that right now, college degree seems to be required. But eventually, that should change, right? Eventually, if we start teaching it at the elementary school level, the junior high level, the high school level, perhaps not necessarily?
I think that's, I think that we need to really be clear about what we expect university degrees to tell us as employers. And a lot of employers are relying on a college degree as a proxy. That is to say, they're not really valuing the college degree. They're saying, well, it probably tells me that somebody's got these skills. At the point where we develop both a better foundational infrastructure so that we can assume that people have some of these skills, and better assessments, more specific assessments that allow me to say, okay, this is a marketing person, this is a marketing person who's got data analytics skills. When I can test that skill set specifically, then employers may have some alternatives to a college degree. What that will allow us to do as well is to open up opportunity to a bigger span of workers and learners. One of the things that I know we've talked about earlier in this conversation is about how we can provide access to the world of data science and analytics to women and people of color who often have been excluded from this opportunity area. And I think it comes back to that idea of arbitrage. In a lot of cases, there are pools of talent that are much more diverse than the world of data science is, but which are just a few skills away. And so we're used to thinking about the universe of data scientists as being kind of a zero-sum game. There's a fixed number of them. You just got to compete more aggressively. Let me give you an example. Marketing analysts are about 60% women and make $61,000 a year. A marketing analyst with a few more data skills and some business process skills can step up to be a business analyst and make almost $80,000 a year. They're about 40% women. Now, a business analyst who then learns Python, she's now making $94,000 a year. She picks up a couple more skills, Hadoop and a few others, and she's a data scientist making $114,000 a year, where about 15 to 20, only 15 to 20% of workers are currently women. So we can arbitrage not only in the value that people have in their careers, but it also is an opportunity in the other direction for employers to arbitrage in diversity.
Got it. It's a great place to end. Matt, thanks so much. Matt
pleasure.
Siegelman and Burning Glass. Time for another poll of our Dial Smith audience. Like we said, we've handed out 100 of these Dial Smith handheld devices. So using that 1 to 5 scale, we're asking our Dial Smith audience if they disagree or agree with the following statement. The current education pipeline is adequately preparing students for careers in data analytics. Use 1 if you strongly disagree with the statement, 2 if you somewhat disagree, 3 if you neither disagree nor agree, 4 if you somewhat agree, and 5, if you strongly agree. We're going to show you the results and more when we return from this quick break. And here is one more of our WorkingNation videos about a training program that is providing high-tech skills in an area you might not expect.
There's an enormous need for orthotics and prosthetic professionals, and there's 13 colleges in the country that teach what we do, and that's it. If we don't treat this workforce development problem, patients aren't going to be getting the services that they need.
The orthotic and prosthetic profession seems to be an outlier in medicine. We are the highest trained clinicians worldwide. With the onset of new technologies and the increasing aging population, the increase of diabetes, the demand will only increase. The limiting factor is the schools. We can't get enough people into the profession to even come close to managing that population. If we can get more people into the schools, the profession is limitless.
I am a mother of 4 and also a grandmother of 1. I've had a lot of jobs. It wasn't necessarily something that I had a passion for. It was something that I did to pay the bills. If I'm gonna be taking my time away from my family, I want it to mean something. And being in the medical field, being in the healthcare field, what I do means something to a lot of different people. My name is Amy Bucci, and I'm from North St. Paul, Minnesota, and I'm in my 3rd year of the Orthotics and Prosthetics Assistant Program at Century College.
Within orthotics and prosthetics, we have the technician level, the assistant level, and the practitioner level. There was a number of individuals working as assistants, but they had no formal education. The industry as a whole got together and said, we need to have formal education for assistants. Students can either focus on the technical piece, direct patient care, or they can get a blend of the mix by being an assistant.
The Orthotics and Prosthetics program is addressing a skills gap in not only the retiring workforce, but also the increased technology needs to better serve the patients and clients. We boast virtually 100% graduation placement, and the demand continues to grow. Our practitioner assistant program is designed in a laddering opportunity so students can come in and out of the program and gain skills and credentials and certifications as it works for them.
The assistant program at Century College is really unique. It's the only one in the country. It was going to allow me to do both things that I wanted to do, work with my hands and do the building of the devices and also have the interactions with the patients.
Right now, there are 2 million people in the United States that wear a prosthetic device. Most of the time, it's undetectable, but we've seen this shift where people are starting to approach wearing a prosthesis as a chance to recreate themselves, and that was our primary focus, taking the stigma away from what it means to be an amputee.
I started swimming when I was 3 years old. For me, it's a place that I don't wear prosthetic legs, and I just feel completely free. I think it is so important for prosthetists to be updated with all of the new technology. They have come so far. I've had rock climbing legs, I've had model legs, I've had these computer legs that I had to plug them in every night, and it's kind of crazy, you know, I'll look down and I'll see these toes with flip-flops on them, and I don't really think I'm missing my legs, and then I take them off and I'm like, oh, I am an amputee, you know?
In the history of the program, they worked so much with wood and leather to create the prosthesis. And now with the implementation of technology, they've had the opportunity to incorporate CAD/CAM and 3D printing, and it has grown their passion for learning more about the field.
I work with a lot of highly active amputees. You get to see patients running, jumping, climbing stairs, and doing outdoor activities. The number one reason that I went into the field is just building relationships. You're not just with an amputee just for that one day. You build a long-term relationship. My name is Andrew Gienow. I'm from Cedar Falls, Iowa, and I'm currently in the Century College program for orthotics and prosthetics.
I was injured in Iraq while on combat operations.
A roadside bomb went off essentially right underneath me, and from the force of that blast, I have been a double amputee since. The very first time I was meeting my prosthetic engineer, I said, my friends wanted me to be in their wedding. They need to know if I can walk down the aisle. And they said, well, how soon is the wedding? I said, it's about 3 weeks away. They looked at me and said, well, you do the work, we'll make the legs. Let's see if we can get there. I'm proud to say that I took my first steps and walked down the aisle with my wife for the wedding.
There are days that I had definitely been in even tears talking with my prosthetist. So having a prosthetist who cares and having that relationship is key. The fact that people want to go into this field who might not even be missing a limb, that is so exciting, and that is really what it's all about, people who care and want to make a difference.
The thing I love about this field is working with patients and building those relationships. Being able to earn my degree and help people each day, I think is the coolest thing.
In orthotics and prosthetics, I can provide a prosthetic limb that really changes somebody's life and really improves their quality of life, and that's very special.
It makes me happy that she's gonna help people because some are really struggling right now. She knows what it's like to be in rough times. She can help because she's been there and done that.
Watching her being a mother, going to school, taking care of these guys, the things that she's done for me made me want to be better for her than for them.
What motivates me is my family. I want to show them that working hard can get you somewhere, and it doesn't matter that I'm 20 years past high school. It's not too late. It's never too late. If you put in the time and the effort, you can achieve anything.
Before the break, we asked our Dial Smith audience how much they agreed or disagreed with this statement. The current education pipeline is adequately preparing students for careers in data analytics. Let's take a look at the results. Shockingly, a large percentage of you believe that you strongly disagree with that statement, which is why we're going to have this panel right now. We're going to take a deeper look at how the education system is preparing job seekers for the demands of the job market. Join me in welcoming Guy Generals. He's president of the Community College of Philadelphia. Jake Schwartz is the co-founder and CEO of General Assembly. Melanie Harris is the Chief Information Officer for the School District of Philadelphia. And H. Patrick Clancy is the president and CEO of Philadelphia Works. Eric Bradlow is the professor of marketing of the Wharton School. Good to have you guys here, and lady as well.
Thank you.
Guy, let me start with you. You're head of a community college here in Philadelphia. What did you think of the audience's reaction when they said that the school system in general in the United States isn't preparing students for jobs in data analytics? Are they right? Is it changing?
Well, you can't argue with the outcomes, with the data. The data clearly are showing that the number of available jobs are not being filled by trained employees. So I think to the extent that schools are preparing the next generation of workers, that's a question that really needs to be asked in a hard way.
What are you guys doing to change that?
So there's no one answer. I think that's part of the results of those data. We are trying to find ways to engage students at an earlier point. For us, the issue is access and opportunity. So it's access and opportunity as it relates to those who are capable, have the aptitude, and are college ready, and they're moving through the community college as a means for saving money and to accelerate their career. But then there's the other broader scope of potential employees or students that we're trying to reach by working with the school district earlier, much earlier, through dual enrollment, through our early college model, and specifically trying to challenge them to go into the STEM fields, to find ways to be engaged in the STEM fields. More specifically, in our dual enrollment programs, we do have early pre-computer science programs that we're introducing them to. We will be offering coding programs, summer programs for students that have yet to rise to the college level. And then in the core curriculum of the college, those who are at college, we're infusing some of these issues that we've been talking about related to data analytics and machine learning, not as a program specific, but infused through the curriculum, both in our computer science areas, Students have to take general education courses and intro to computer science. And those courses, they're being introduced to some of these concepts that we're talking about. And even in our health sciences fields, students are exposed to equipment, digital analytics. Most of the equipment, we just spent over $7 million in brand new equipment in our health science fields. And all of that equipment is dealing with issues of big data, data analytics, and the digital visualizations of those data. So we're trying to infuse it. We're trying to grab students at an earlier age. And we're also focusing on a more specified way of preparing students to go into these fields through our computer science programs.
Melanie Harris, you've heard the previous panelists talk about how it has to start even earlier, right? What are you doing at the elementary school level? It used to be computer literacy. It's more than that now, right?
Well, it is, but I have to say, and we take our titles very seriously, now it's digital literacy. But truly, from kindergarten through 8th grade, we have a digital literacy curriculum. Starting from kindergarten, the idea of teaching patterns, right? Because at the end, coding is all about patterns. So starting with the idea of problem solving at a young age, moving that into computational thinking. And by 2nd grade, we have basic computer programs going on, gamification of coding, working in both the computer science lab, as well as trying to have the teachers in the digital literacy lab working with the math teacher or science or social studies, and how can they co-develop projects. And that's just in the elementary to get them ready for high school.
How much are you communicating with the local community and the businesses in the local community to see what they need in order to be able to fill those jobs?
Regularly, daily. We have ongoing conversations with Comcast. We have a member of
the big employer here in Philadelphia.
Yes. Yeah. So we have ongoing conversations, and I will say that part of, and this came up earlier, the preparation for the jobs are not necessarily in analytics, data analytics specific types of jobs. It's infused across a variety of areas. So to the extent that we may be talking to an IBX, they may be looking for marketers or someone in their accounting office, but that person needs to understand big data, data analytics, and so forth. So we have pretty regular, all of our programs have advisory boards, and those boards are filled with the local business communities who are constantly upgrading, helping us to upgrade our curriculum and find the new frontier of knowledge that we need to be teaching.
All right, so Eric, they've gone through elementary school, or maybe they've gotten some college degree, now they're going off to graduate school in marketing. What is happening at the college degree and the graduate degree? And what needs to be happening before they even get to you when it comes to data analytics?
Say a couple things about it. First, a lot of people think, so I'm at the Wharton School, obviously one of the hosts of today's conference. There's no skills gap at the undergrad or graduate level, but that's false. The way I view it is that you can hire a lot of students with business degrees, that's great. You can hire a lot of people with data science degrees, that's great. But what we're trying to accomplish at the Wharton School is people with both. And here's why. If you think about the 5 steps for any successful analytics project, first, the project has to be scoped. So what is the fundamental business problem you're solving? Second, what's the data asset that you have that can answer the problem? Third, someone actually has to do the analysis itself. Fourth, someone actually has to say, okay, now that we know this, what's the business intelligence? And then it actually has to get enacted at the firm or place that the person's working. And so our vision at Wharton is if you have business skills, you can maybe do 1 in 5. If you have analytics skills, maybe you can do 2, 3, and 4. But I don't know how you could supervise people and lead organizations unless you have an understanding of all 5. And the wonderful thing we're doing here at Wharton, and actually Melissa and I were talking about it beforehand, is that you have to have high school students coming to Wharton with a lot of the skills already. So the wonderful part about it is that, matter of fact, my colleague Adi Weiner, who's sitting here, my middle son Zach went through this program. He started a Wharton Moneyball Academy a couple years ago, where actually high school students can now actually take courses in analytics. And we're going to broaden that to many, many other courses. So, and I also see us partnering with the School District of Philadelphia to, why not, you learn analytics by doing analytics. So why not have our students who come here to the Wharton School partner with the Philadelphia School District, and now we have an opportunity for students to actually teach analytics and apply it.
Patrick, how is Philadelphia Works, your organization, advancing this cause?
Yeah, for us, it's about how do we get individuals who are in transition up to the next level? Like, how do we help them look at different career pathways and really begin to look at careers in a different way? Instead of just attaching to a quick job, but really looking at what are the skills I need? And this is where our conversations with Dr. General and his staff, our employers, we have 31 board members. It's a private sector board that manages Philadelphia Works. That really helps us to make the investments. We make investments in education and training all throughout the city. Our goal is how do we help as many people move up the career ladder, but also expose them to the skills that are needed today. I think we mentioned earlier about it's not just the soft skills, it's the technical skills. It's not just the technical skills, but it's the grit, the persistence. It's someone that really understands what it takes to move up. So we are building out career pathways in all our major industries to really help our customers better understand that you have to start somewhere, but eventually you can really be up there.
And this is a really good example of how you can't silo all these skills, right? Everybody's got to be working together.
Right.
You see that at General Assembly?
Absolutely. So when we started General Assembly, the vision was how can we be this ladder up, especially around skills and job titles and descriptions that hadn't existed a decade previous, right? And I think this is key to mention. If you look at the primary sort of teams that build software products, whether it's inside a big company or in a startup, it's things that didn't really have names, you know, at the turn of the millennium, right? So you have UX design, you've got data science, you've got, I mean, you did have software development, but software development looks completely different than it did in a previous generation.
It's too broad now, right? Isn't it too big? It's too broad a statement.
Well, right, you can't even use that term, right? So how do you, though, and then you see an incredible speed of acceleration of the need for those jobs that far outstrips the existing supply. Because most of the existing supply are people who learned informally and on the job because they were in the right place at the right time. You heard Alan talk about how they sort of invented data practice inside LinkedIn. That's how this stuff evolved, but that doesn't happen at scale. And so you have these little sort of boutique people who are very talented in one place. Maybe they can mentor some other people and build some competency, but that's not sort of at industrial scale. And so the vision of GA was how could we take the best of the paradigm of vocational training, giving people the skills they need when they need it, that they can immediately play on the job, but pair it with a certain sort of aspirational career view that the best graduate programs do. And I went to Wharton, and so I had that sort of framework and I wanted to bring that Wharton framework into this world of tech and design and data. And so we built a campus in New York and started putting people through 3-month programs in order to give them just enough skills to get that on-ramp to the next job. And it turned out we could do it. And it turned out people wanted to pay for it themselves. And that led to us building campuses all over the world. We have 22 campuses in cities all around the world. And that led to now helping almost a third of the Fortune 500 do the exact same thing inside their own walls.
The reason they want to pay for it, or they're willing to pay for it, is obviously because they think they're going to get a return, right? They must get a higher salary once they finish.
I think of what we do as an investment business. I think too many people look at education as a media business, and it's not. It's not about content. People put their time, their energy, their passion, and their money against an educational program, not for that program itself, but because they think it's going to lead to economic improvements down the road. And so I see our job, and really all of our jobs here on this panel, as fiduciaries of really meeting those obligations and trying to deliver people the skills and the opportunities they need to get to that next level in their career, no matter where they start.
Sure. Patrick, I see you nodding your head. Where does your organization fit in? Are you providing courses?
Yeah, so we actually are the investors. So we actually are looking at a proposal from General Assembly, right? Here we are, big guy, right? Yeah, that's a good night. We do a lot of work with the community college. We do a lot of work with JEVs and other organizations around the city, Thomas Jefferson University. Our goal is how do we invest in high quality programs to give people an opportunity to get back on the ladder? Like we have customers that are in transition, which means that customers are on public assistance, coming back from incarceration, laid off from an employer, people that are just not quite sure what they want to do. And our goal as a workforce board is to really figure out where are our best investments that return the information around long-term sustainability, which is why we also use data analytics. We are a big fan of burning glass, but we're also a big fan of our own internal data data mining and making sure that the investment we make in a training program yields into a high level of employment. So that's where we fit. We're part of the bigger picture in the city. We work closely with the community college, the school district. It's all part of the mayor's new initiative around a citywide workforce development strategy.
Do you find that people who have been incarcerated think, oh, I can't do that, data analytics, it sounds like I need a computer science degree?
No, I think when you break it down into the elements that are needed, I think you can convince them they probably do some of the analysis already. So a lot of our customers need that confidence. They need someone to say, let's take a couple minutes and let's think through what are the specific skills you need for this job, and let's see where you are. And then let's see what an investment plan will look like to get you back on the road.
I think this is the most beautiful thing about this moment. We talk a lot about it as a crisis and a moment of potential dystopia. But in a way, this volatility and this uncertainty has created this opportunity for people to get on on-ramps in non-traditional ways. We see a lot of our programs used to source non-traditional students into companies in ways that can, dramatically accelerate the path towards more diversity in the workforce, more people from really non-traditional backgrounds, and we have people who were formerly incarcerated, gone through GA, and now have six-figure jobs in San Francisco.
Wow.
I mean, the possibilities are really there when you embrace this idea that it's about the skill you can do, not the quality of the paper that your degree is written on.
Yeah, I was going to build on what Jake said. I think one of the things everybody on this panel would agree on is this dichotomy that used to exist where I either know nothing or I go get a full-time degree. I think that's a worthless paradigm at this point. I think even students at Wharton, at Penn now, want modularized education. They don't necessarily want to sit through a 14-week course for a skill that they could pick up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So one of the things we've done at the Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative is we've offered not-for-credit workshops. I need to know about data science, I need to know about R, Python, SQL. Well, I could take a 14-week course, which many of our students do, or I could come in for 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, come in 3 or 4 weeks. And now I've advanced myself to the next level. So I think one of the things we are all seeing now is it's about modularized education, and also this idea that it doesn't sit in the silo of data analytics. It has to be integrated with whether, as you said, history, mathematics, social science, et cetera.
So we were talking about that before the panel began. The idea is, do we see data analytics even at the high school level becoming its own track, or should it be integrated?
I hope not.
No, right, and we're in agreement with that you're going to still hear the familiar titles of Algebra 1, Algebra 2, statistics, probability, classes, and really is more of that integration of that, really analyzing data in a real world problem set type of way that, again, that children are already thinking about. But I said one of the computer science classes that we peeked in on, it was, if you were a Lyft driver, how could you maximize your route for the most return in the least amount of hours? So given a certain data set, analyze that and produce your results. And again, having the kids work in small group settings, that whole collaboration that the previous panel talked about. We're not just producing, programmers that are going to sit in the dark and not have any social skills. I think we all see in this global economy, people need to be able to talk, communicate, collaborate, and compromise.
More than ever.
More than ever, so that you want to walk out with these skills, but be able to make it anywhere.
What aren't we doing right?
I think in part the answer to that has to do with we've yet as institutions, and I'll speak from an institutional point of view, we have yet to move away from the traditional way that we consider learning in terms of credentials and degrees and so forth. And I think what he was talking about in terms of modularizing the curriculum is so critically important. It's not about the credential anymore, the seat time, or the 15 hours over the course of a year. It's about what you know and what you're capable of doing. And oftentimes you can modularize, and at the community college we're doing a lot of work in micro-credentials, finding ways through corporate contracts to find those specific skills that they may need.
So you get a certificate.
So you get a certificate, or you get a micro certificate to go with the particular skill that you have. And the other thing I wanted to mention very quickly is that a phenomena that we're seeing is, the earlier panel was talking about the number of liberal arts bachelor folks that are finding ways into the computer science area or into the to the big data area. And we're seeing that quite frequently at the community college, where the BA with English and or history, who's a waitress somewhere, is finding their way back and getting these credentials through our non-credit division of the college, and or in some cases through the credit. So we are able to condense the 2-year degree into a year or an 18 months and provide students with an opportunity that already have a bachelor's degree to move forward with the technical degree.
Mind if I go, Jake?
You please.
Thanks, buddy.
We've been waiting, so we're kind of like...
The thing I would say is I think that having the employers at the forefront is critical. They are the ones that are the recipients of all the investments we make and all the training we do collectively. So really having them be a part of the solution and part of the picture and part of the engagement is really critical. We won't have any success unless we stay closely in touch with the employers.
So they come to you and tell you what?
Well, they come to us, and what we would do is we work with them on what exactly do they need, and then how do we modularize or customize a program. So we don't want to just do a program that maybe gets somebody a job. We want to make sure that people are going to go to work. So it's making sure the employers are part of the selection of the candidates, but also part of the figuring out what is the real critical skills that are needed.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so we do a customized training program with IT companies. We actually work along with one of our partners in the audience, Jebs, where they do an apprenticeship into a IT career field where individuals, community college too, settle down, big guy.
Just saying.
I gotta make sure everybody understands that. Great guy, by the way. But yeah, so part of it is how do we make sure that we keep that link together, that we don't just train for training's sake, which is probably sometimes years ago was our concern, but how do we make sure employers are at the forefront?
That's one of the beauties, by the way, of being at a university, because students will let us know. If they interview for jobs and then all of a sudden they come back and say, Professor Bradlow, this was great, except I had an interview today where they gave me a test. I mean, my oldest son's a senior in college. Every interview he had, there was actually some sort of test he had to take. They don't, yes, the degree is nice, it got him in the front door, but then here's the test, do you know this? And if they come back and say, Professor Bradlow, we don't actually know this, then all of a sudden it can be part of our curriculum.
Yeah. I want to go back to this employer concept. And Patrick, I could have said literally everything Patrick said, because this idea of being that close to the employer is sort of the only way that you really make sure people are going to get jobs. It's not like a hope strategy. But I do think employers, and we spend a lot of time with our employers, is that they have a ways to go. I think we as a society have not fully transitioned from a sort of pedigree view of the world with degrees and the sort of very old world filled with these proxies that don't really describe your skills and abilities but sort of pretend to. And companies, especially really large companies, are really struggling because they struggle to find the talent, but they have all these processes and policies in place that have accumulated over 50, 60, 70 years of how they do things, and that can't change overnight. And so, since we were acquired by the Adecco Group last year, which is the largest staffing company in the world, what we now get this view into is how companies deep in the bowels of HR are trying to affect their own sets of change in order to accommodate a view of the world that is open to non-traditional pathways and to certificates and micro-credentials and more investment-oriented paths of education. But we're not there yet, and it's going to take a while. And this period of dislocation between these different models that are somewhat at odds creates these moments of uncertainty.
Also, the very low unemployment level, right? That's got to be one of the biggest drivers.
That's
that's a good thing, right? That's what forces companies to look outside the traditional way, the traditional metrics. Melanie, you were going to say something.
Bringing it back to some of the challenges, even early on, is training our teaching workforce to turn this around to our students. So in a lot of ways, our young people are ready for this. It's, it started with the gaming, their idea of consuming large amounts of data, being able to process it in a different way than we as adults do. But now we need teachers to be able to teach that. So I mentioned, yes, it is starting to find its way into algebra and statistics and research, but I need more of those teachers. So we are partnering with the state. The state sees this as a need. They're worried about not just the Philadelphia market, but all over having students ready for this job. So they're willing to invest in teacher courses. And we're helping partner on that as well. But I also, to the job community out there, I'm hoping that the job community isn't just sitting around and waiting for us to produce, 130,000 marketable children that
Probably only 80% of them are interested in data science.
we only shoot for 100%. But to say, what can the jobs offer back to us? Talking earlier about, can you mentor a student? Can we create these, while our teachers are still working on that skill set, what are the after hours or clubs or supports where they can have access to a data scientist mentor for projects?
As Melanie and I were talking about earlier, I think one of the opportunities is we have a bunch of brilliant students here and a bunch of professors that would love to give back by donating a little bit of their time to work with people in the Philadelphia School District, because our WCAI motto, again, is you learn analytics by doing it. And so how are you going to do it? Well, you're going to do it by working with students, working on real data projects. As I always say, analysis only is hard once you hit the data in a real problem. If you just talk about it, problems seem all simple, until you actually have to clean the data, use it, and then you find some pattern, you're like, what is that? And so I think there's a real opportunity for partnership between both Wharton, community colleges, the Philadelphia School District. I'm looking forward to it.
How about me?
Great way to end
You
the
as well.
panel.
This
guy's
a deal on stage. Look at this.
Well, it's a one-sided deal because we've offered something for free, and all we want back is to help.
This has been a fantastic discussion. We really enjoyed it here today. We're going to do one more Working Nation live data poll before we go. So using that 1 to 5 scale with your little handy dial Smith device here, do you disagree or agree with the following statement? I am more likely to send or receive a LinkedIn profile now in lieu of a traditional resume or CV. Use 1 if you strongly disagree with the statement, 2 if you somewhat disagree, 3 if you neither disagree nor agree, 4 if you somewhat agree, and 5 if you strongly agree.
And Alan is watching.
Yeah, that's right, and he wants to know. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we're going to show the poll results here in a second.
Thank you.
But it was good to have you all here today.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Oh, let's get up.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Are we ready, guys? With the tell me when we're ready with the results here. Okay. Now to the results of our final Working Nation live data poll. The statement was, I am more likely to send or receive a LinkedIn profile now in lieu of a traditional CV or resume. Let's take a look at the results. Neither disagree nor agree is the biggest number. Okay, I find that surprising, but look how many people say they strongly agree, 20%, that they're more likely to get a LinkedIn link instead of a resume. When you add up both somewhat agree and strongly agree, it's a pretty big number. So LinkedIn is really seeped into the jobs economy, as we say. Guys, this has been so great to be with you today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on The Future is Now, Closing the Data Analytics Skills Gap. It's a joint town hall from the Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative and Working Nation. I'm Michelle Caruso-Cabrera. Good night.